I think there were a lot of things that we just closed our eyes to or ignored
Yeah.
with that. And now being on the outside and going, ooh, that's not good. I'm having to sort of reconcile a lot.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Epic Kate podcast. I got to talk with a really good friend and former colleague named Naomi, who was in the same organization that I was back in the day, called Covenant Players. If you're listening to this, you maybe are doing so because you were a part of this organization. And maybe you're curious about our experiences. Maybe you know one or both of us personally. We talk very openly and honestly about some heavy things in this episode, talking about our miscarriages, about our struggles in faith and in doing the work that this ministry entailed while going through grief. And that might be heavy for some of you to listen to, so I wanted to put that out there before we start. It means so much to me to have these covenant player conversations, to really connect about the truth about what happened. And as I say later on in the episode, it's not about bashing the organization or anybody. It's giving a voice to what happened. It's a part of healing, it's a part of processing and connecting and sharing hope to people who are still in a difficult place in their journey, maybe. These conversations are very special to me, to talk with people who know this part of me, this huge part of who I was and what I did for all of my 20s. Honestly, this was my whole life for over a decade. So, let's get into the conversation.
Heartfelt conversations can change the world. Here's the Epic Kate podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Epic Kate podcast. I'm really, really happy to have my friend Naomi here. Naomi, I'd love for you to just give a brief introduction of yourself.
Oh gosh, a brief introduction of myself. I'm Naomi. I am from California, but I live in Wales, and I've known Katie for a very long time. Very, very long time. And I'm really excited to come chat with you.
Yay! So yes, we've known each other since I was 21, and I'm now 37, turning 38 in a few weeks. So a few minutes. And Naomi was actually one of my leaders within the group when my very first tour.
Sorry.
I mean, we were both babies.
We were.
And we had grown up in this context, in this social bubble, this culture within a culture, this cult within a cult. Whoa, am I going there already? No, but I mean, no hard feelings against a lot of things, but
yeah.
we were in a culture that was so insulated.
I found a picture of us or on Facebook or something popped up recently of when we were in Switzerland, and we were both like these little tiny baby people. And I think that tour was so interesting because you were going through your own struggles, I was going through my own struggles, but we sort of went like this half the time. But there was a lot of, Katie, just the thing I remember most about that tour is how fast you picked up German. That was insane. It was, I remember sitting there going, I've been here longer and she's better than me.
Oh, your encouragement, but your encouragement about that just meant everything, because I've always been a little sponge of, please tell me I'm special. I was so young and I just wanted to prove myself, and I wanted to, be noticed. And
we all felt that way. I think it was this culture that sort of, even though we were constantly told we're not in competition with each other and we're all on the same level, I think there very much was a sense of notice me, And that's, yeah, I think we were all doing it while pretending we weren't doing it at the
Mm.
same time, which created sort of a weird, interesting dynamic.
You
Yeah.
grew up with Covenant players and knew that you were going to join, right?
I didn't know I was going to join, but I went to a really small Christian school for elementary or primary school, and they used to come every
It was
single year.
it was the koala plays.
Yep,
Yeah.
I have a super strong memory of being in second grade, and Covenant players came, and we did these plays that were for children, and one set of them were about koalas. And there's one where the one koala doesn't want to play with the other koala because she wears glasses. And I'd only had my glasses for about a year, maybe 6 months. And so it really stuck with me, this play about made fun of because of glasses and everything. And yeah, for whatever reason. And we all went out on the playground and pretended to be koalas after that. And so, yeah.
It just hit me that your little girl is like the age that you were when you saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. She'll be 6 in July. Yeah.
Wow.
So she's just a little bit younger than I was when that happened. Yeah. But no, I didn't know I was going to join Covenant Players until after high school. I was trying to find something to do. I knew I wanted to do theater, but I didn't have the self confidence and the self confidence really to try to make it in, secular real theater. Um, and I had seen a play. I had gone on a holiday with my best friend after we graduated to the East Coast of America, and we saw the what are they called? Sights and Sound Theater. They're in Pennsylvania, and it's this big Christian theater. It's huge, and they do like these massive productions. We saw Noah's Ark, and so they have like animals and like the whole thing. And I remember thinking, wow, that's really cool. Wonder if there's another Christian theater group I could join. And so I Googled and found Covenant Players, and I went, oh, I remember them. They do the koala plays. Um, and so, yeah, that led to the rest of the 20-year half of my life. So
I I want to go back to what's uncomfortable. um, the way that you immediately were like, "I'm sorry," when I said that you were my leader within we were like a franchise thing. It was like a groups within the group. So what are your feelings there?
I think I'm still doing a lot of unpacking. I think you've had conversations with some other people who have left Covenant Players, and I think they've all been gone out of the ministry longer than I have. It's only just been just over a year that I've left, and I'm still unpacking a lot of things. I think I have, especially those tours in Germany, I have this innate sense of failure, um, like really deep seated, that I'm still working through, because not all of it was a lot of it wasn't my fault. But I know, but I carry that very heavily, especially because after our tour together, they shut down that area for a short time, and under my leadership. And so, yeah, there's definitely a lot of shame almost that I wasn't able to make it work. And then I also know that because I was over my head and in a situation that I don't think I really should have been in as a leader in that area at that time, I know I wasn't also the best friend or the best personnel leader that I could have been. And I think that's where a lot of that comes in. And I think also looking at, trying to be the good, tote the party line, play by the rules, get noticed. I think there were a lot of things that we just closed our eyes to or ignored.
Yeah.
With that, and now being on the outside and going, ooh, that's not good. I'm having to sort of reconcile a lot of
Yeah.
that in myself. Yeah.
This is an impression that I have from my 21-year-old. No, I was 22 by this point,
Too.
peak maturity. I was like, she's so weird. Why does she walk around in heels when she doesn't have to? Why does she kiss me on the cheek? Ugh. um, I remember one time when we were really mad at each other, because you were telling me to put lipstick on before a program. What do you remember about this scenario?
The lipstick thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the exact incident, but I remember a lot of clashes with you and I about standards of appearance and performing. And yeah, I don't know. I think because again, that was a rule that we had, that women would wear makeup to perform. I was like, well, why aren't you doing this? This is the rule. And I I still am in a way, but I think it was for a different purpose, very, very appearance conscious. And I wanted everybody on our team to meet that standard. Part of it was, honestly, the fact that we were all so young, and I wanted people to take us seriously. And so, hitting those social standards, I felt like, well, maybe they'll take us a little bit more seriously if we rock up looking professional, whatever that means. Now, I don't know that I would fight it so hard. I think, I mean, look at me, I've got blue hair now. But, and I'm learning to, my appearance, my dress and everything is much more what I want it to be rather than what I think other people want it to be, which was a huge, I mean, most of Covenant players, I was trying to be what I thought other people wanted me to be. And so down to my clothes. When I left Covenant players, and all of a sudden I was like, I can buy whatever kind of clothes I want. I can do my hair however I want. And it's actually really hard. It's still very difficult for me to figure out, what do I like? What is my style? I'm starting to find it. But I spent 21 years fitting in a box. And so now I don't have a box. And sometimes it's scary. Sometimes I want to go back in the box, because it was easier for people to tell me how to dress, what to think, where to go, how to do it, rather than trying to figure it out on my own.
Like, my heart just has so much compassion for all of us kids that were out there cosplaying as professionals.
That's a great way to put it.
But we were so unequipped for a lot of these things, and we just had so much pressure put down on us of, you've got to get these bookings, or you're not literally not going to have petrol in your tank to get to the next place.
Yeah. I mean, I think there were some aspects of our training that was, I mean, I feel like I didn't become a unit leader until I'd been in ministry for, well, I won't count the first tour because that was just weird. It's been 6 years. I was in for 6 years before I was a unit leader, which at that time I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna, I'm such a failure. I've been in for 6 years and not a unit leader. And so, but I felt like, some of the training was good, but I did feel like, yeah, there was a lot of pressure for things that were a little bit outside of our control. Like, especially bookings. I hated PR with a passion. I hated it. And I wasn't good at it. I could book a program in person sometimes, but I rarely booked one over the phone. And I just constantly had this feeling of, this is out of my control. I can't force these people to say yes. And I was consistently in areas, with the exception of a few times, where the area was oversaturated from people before me, or there was a culture shift happening in the area where we weren't fitting in anymore in the right way. And there was nothing I remember our tour. We would PR and PR and PR and PR, and we just, places that had booked us for decades were saying no. And it had nothing to do with us as individuals.
Yeah. Economy shift, culture shift,
Mm-hmm.
so many things.
So many things.
We were always held up to, well, look at how easy it was and how rich it was in the 90s and in the 80s. Like, why can't you be like that? I want to move to something else. How was your mental health affected in the travels? Like, when did you begin to notice, like, wait, this is really not easy for me?
I think it was when I came to Europe, and suddenly being thrust into a new culture, and then in Germany especially, a new language where there wasn't really a rest. When you tour in Sweden or different things, English was a little bit more available, especially in host homes. But in Germany, it wasn't, and it was very isolating. And I think that's when a lot of my mental health started cracking. And now looking back, because now my daughter has an autism diagnosis. And since her diagnosis, I'm sitting there going, you're a little me. Wait a second. And so now in my 40s, I'm realizing I'm probably autistic. I think she and I are both ADHD autistic. And then looking back on that, I hit what now I would identify as an autistic burnout, because I couldn't maintain the mask anymore. That was so easy to maintain in a English, a comfortable, cultural setting. And then suddenly I'm doing this thing that's fairly stressful, being with people all the time, traveling all the time, not knowing where our next money is coming from all the time. All those things are stressors. But then you throw in another language, another culture on top of that, and everything just sort of cracked.
And how much worse off would we have been if we didn't have people telling us how awesome we were all the time and how they could never do it?
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, yes. Say more, say more.
Validate me. Yeah, I think, but I don't think even though I can look back on it, and those tours in Germany, especially the two where I was the unit leader in Southern Germany and Austria, the one with you and the one before, I was in a really not good mental place at all. But because we're good coconut singers and we're gonna, we gotta be out there doing the thing. And so I don't think I even admitted to myself how not okay I was. And it wasn't until I got up to Sweden, the tour after I was with you, and I wasn't the team leader. And that was just such a, yeah, it was a rejuvenating. I had, what got on with the team really well. I had this weird guy named Morton with us, yeah. And those tours up in Sweden were just like, oh, I could breathe. And I felt like I was able to, heal a little bit, even though I wasn't fully admitting to myself that I needed that healing, if that makes sense.
Did you feel a matter of, it's just faith over matter, just got to pray harder?
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting. So I went 2 weekends ago, I went and did some performing, some Covenant player performing. And we went to a RCCG, an African denomination church, like women's retreat thing, and we were only doing a short set and then leaving to go perform somewhere else. but it's the first time in a long time that I've been in that particular environment. And it was so much fun because I wasn't sitting there trying to prove who I was, trying to have some deep spiritual like experience. I wasn't sitting there waiting for God to do something exciting in this Pentecostal environment. I wasn't trying to show that I was a good Christian. I was just there being me, performing the plays. And it was so relaxing and so much fun. And just, yeah, we had such a good day. And I realized how much pressure I had been putting on myself to appear to be the good Christian and whatever. And of course, we were performing for different denominations, so that looked different in every single place. And I was trying to fit, again, like I said, I was constantly trying to fit myself into the box of what I thought everybody around me needed me to be.
Do you think that's just a fancy way to describe masking?
I think it's more than masking. I mean, yes. I mean, it's a form of masking. But I think that level went a bit deeper than just trying to fit in.
There's also like spiritual identity and the burden, the onus, or that God needs to work through my performing to touch lives.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and that I am a good Christian. You know, I never felt like I was as good a Christian as everybody else because I didn't have a prayer life. I didn't often read my Bible. I would usually fall asleep. You know, I tended to get most of my true, real spiritual sort of feelings, like feeding, so to speak, from things that were not at all, you know, from being out at the beach and watching the ocean or watching the stars at night or watching a Disney movie or listening to music or reading a non-Christian book. Those I gleaned so many insights and understandings from those things, but that's not what a good Christian does. A good Christian prays every day, reads their Bible every day, has all these things. And so I never felt like I was really a good Christian. But I would put on all the dressings. Yeah.
How has your faith like shifted through this time of being in full-time ministry and to kind of weaning out of it?
I feel like in a way, on the surface, I think people would say that it's not as strong, but I, in myself, feel like it's stronger. Because I'm not trying to do anything, be anybody that I'm not. I mean, I don't think I'll ever completely get rid of that, you know. You know, I think there's always aspects of making sure you fit in somewhere. But I'm not striving as hard. I mean, I don't go to church anymore, partly because church is not a very good environment for neurodiverse people. My daughter finds it too loud most of the time. And so if I take her, I spend most of the time trying to entertain her. And then what's the point? I can do that at home much better. And so, you know, there's not a good environment for that. But I don't really miss it, if I'm honest. I miss the community aspect of it, like the social aspect, and that, yeah, that sense of community, that there's activities or people you can chat with. You know, I'm pretty isolated here at the moment, and that's the season that I'm in. But I also feel like I'm not trying to be something I'm not, but I also feel like I've questioned, do I still consider myself a Christian? I'm like, yes, that's still, I have a very real faith, and I believe there is a God. I believe that in Jesus and the Trinity and all that, but I also feel like the box is bigger than the box is way bigger than what we ever were told, and that and so I'm exploring the box more, so to speak. Yeah. But it's hard. There was letting go of things, I think, has, hurts. There's wounds, it's but I think it's also ultimately better in the long run. More authentic.
Freedom, like the freedom that was always promised within the rigid walls of religion. The religion, like it just, like you're saying, boxes up all of it.
Yeah, and I think
real freedom in saying, hey, we don't know as much as we think we do.
And I think there's great beauty in that. And I think there's a little bit more faith required to say, actually, God is a lot more complicated and also more simple than what we made it out to be. And I think, I don't know, I find it sort of comforting not to have all the answers. My husband, Dale, he's got a master's in theology. And so there's all of these, well, there's a all the, I don't understand half of what he talks about. And I very much am, you know what, I don't think all that matters. I mean, I'm glad you enjoy it, and I'm glad people have the, that outlet. But for me, I'm just sort of like, you know what? It's a big universe and I don't understand it all, but I believe that there's a higher being that is love, that created out of love, that is creative and loving. And if I live my life toward those goals, being creative and loving, then I'm going to fall in line somewhere along the way. So, yeah.
You've been through so much in these years. Like, I can't even imagine. It's like the rest of your life unpacking it. It's like 20 years to live through it and 50 years to sort it out. Like,
yeah, and there's a lot of big things in those 20 years. A lot of
you've lost friends. You've been taken advantage of. Like, your skills, you were the last person, like, as I understand it now, as of 5th of June, I heard yesterday that there is no more Covenant players, really. There's one team in the US that's like
I don't feel comfortable commenting on that because I don't have all the details.
No worries.
Yeah.
But but as far as what relates to you directly, you were the last person to make a lifetime commitment.
As I understand it, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was in 2012, right after I turned 30. Yeah.
And that is a very weird concept for 2012. Like, for
yeah.
But I was like, if anyone's gonna make that kind of commitment, it's Naomi. She's always gonna be a Covenant player.
And I thought I always was gonna be a Covenant player. Like, and even now I struggle with trying to know what I'm going to do with my life, but it was also time to walk. It wasn't serving the organization I made a commitment to didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah. And there's, like you said, it's a lot of unpacking and sometimes things will come up suddenly where I go, well, that was really screwed up, or I'll be talking about something with somebody who was never in the ministry, and I'll sort of casually mention something and they're like, what? And I'm like, oh, or my therapist. That happens all the time with my therapist. I'll be like, oh yeah, da 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 da. She goes, what, really? And I'm like, oh, okay, not normal. Okay. Registering that. Yeah.
Because, like, again, we're in such a vacuum. We didn't know so much. It was just like, this is all life is. And that's where, like, I know the word cult is so strong, and I'm not like my tongue was a little bit in my cheek about calling it that.
Yeah.
But there were definitely aspects of that.
Or a highly controlled organization.
Yeah. Hierarchical.
Yeah. I mean, I think back to, when we were in Australia and we lost, so we toured in Australia, and in the first 9 months we were there, we got pregnant, and then we lost our first baby, and we found out, so we got pregnant, and then in June, and then in August, we found out that the baby had a chromosomal disorder, and we decided to continue the pregnancy as long as we could, even though we knew that baby wasn't going to survive. And so we went off the road. And then he ended up dying, and the baby, and I had him in September, and we were off the road the whole time. We had a wonderful, amazing support system of former Covenant players who were in Sydney, Claire, who we lived with, and Lina, Mark, and they were like our family, and they were amazing. But we were back on the road by November, and we didn't want to go back on the road. And I was not ready. Physically, I was fine, but emotionally, I was not ready to be back out on the road. And I fought it, and I had a huge fight with our supervisors, and I was like, I'm leaving, I'm going to get on a plane and leave. But I had not reached that point yet, even with all of that, where I could walk away from the ministry. I still felt like I would have been a bad Christian or a bad person. And so we went back out on the road, and I just think, God, and I was emotionally fragile, and I'm telling everybody my baby died, and I had no filter at all. And again, looking back on this as an autistic person, I'm like, yep, she had no masking skills for about 6 months. No masking skills. So there I am out there in people's homes, crying all the time. And I thought, well, what these people must think about the ministry, that didn't look good on anybody, and that's a lot. And then when we got pregnant again the following June, I lost that baby in August on the road. We lost the baby. I had a week off. We were staying with really, 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 really good friends out in South Australia, and in Victoria. And I was going to fly back to Sydney to be home. They weren't going to give Dale any time off because he was just the dad.
Yeah. So it was an early miscarriage, so it barely counted anyway.
Yeah, it was only 9 weeks, so it was no big deal.
That's sarcasm to the listeners out there. It's sarcasm.
That's very sarcastic.
Yeah,
especially since that one was a surprise. That one was harder for me. With Jeremiah, the first baby, I knew it was coming, and I had time to process it, and I had time to grieve before, in a sense. But this one, I mean, as you know, it when it's all of a sudden, there's nothing. It just like the floor goes out from under you. But I was going to fly back to Sydney, and I was told, you can fly back to Sydney, but could you stay another couple days? Because there's a really big workshop that's been booked with this Bible college, and it would be a really good opportunity to have a really good workshop with this group, because there'll be good networking for future bookings. And, you're really the best person to lead this workshop. And I did it. I stayed. I led a 3-hour workshop with 50 Bible school students in Melbourne. And it was a really good workshop, if I do say so myself. But I shouldn't have been there. And Dale shouldn't have been there. And I flew back to Sydney. And then we had a week before we flew to New Zealand. I'm sure Dale's never really processed, especially that second loss toll. But we should have never been put in that position to begin with. And it just makes me sad. And I know that there are a lot of other stories, a lot of other stories like that. I think that's where it's most heartbreaking, is that, we were constantly, we love you, and we're this community, and we're this, and I truly believe, I truly believe in my heart of hearts that most of the people really truly believed the things they were telling us. I don't think that people have malicious intent. I really don't. But I do think that things got so warped and so, I don't know,
Yeah.
messed up, that then we ended up with these situations.
There was never time to process trauma. You just had to, and so we got so good at just putting on the smile, like to be able to go from dead sleep to Covenant Players. This is Katie. What, how can I help you? Like you could pull that voice, you could pull that out of nothing.
Yeah.
I was hit so hard by your loss, the first one, because I had just lost my first pregnancy, and I was like, well, if I'm not gonna have my baby, at least she's gonna get a miracle, right? Like it has to happen. And
Yeah.
it was like a hitting point in my life of like, hey, you know what? I am allowed to get angry at God. Before that unquestionable thing, like you can't ever doubt God's plan. You can't ever do that.
That was I didn't get that with Jeremiah, our first baby, because there was so much, we were praying so hard. People all over I saw so many amazing things with Jeremiah, with sharing that story, because we shared with everybody what was going on. And I saw amazing stories of people, you know, finding a faith that they thought they had lost, and different things. And even though we ultimately lost Jeremiah, you know, I felt like there was real purpose in his life. But when we lost Kayla, the second one, that was I call that my Job baby, because I remember laying on the floor at a host home, the host home we went to right after we lost that pregnancy, directly after, and going, well, that's it. I'm done. I'm done with God. I'm done with all of this, because what's the point? And ultimately, I got really angry at God, and we got a lot of fights, and we got, you know, and that was a really refreshing point in my spirituality. But I also realized that I couldn't just, my understanding of a higher being of love, as I said earlier, was so strong that I couldn't completely shut the door. I tried really hard. I was like pushing, I'm like, no, shut that door. And I, you know, but something deep in me was like, no, we're not going to do that. But those two big events obviously were major turning points on a lot of things. A lot of things. Yeah.
I was right there with you. I was traveling around South Africa, and I just wanted to cry to every single host home. I just wanted to talk about it. I wanted to know if other people felt what I felt. I was so raw, and like I think it happened like in the week of my DNC. I ended up like performing Proxy with Denise.
Yeah.
Which is a play about unaliving.
Yeah.
Unaliving oneself by jumping off of a building. A person's up there and another person's trying to talk them down.
And
like,
purpose. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I was that to have to travel in that raw state, man.
Well,
Nobody should have to do that.
So we lost Jeremiah in September. It was a Christmas tour. So, you know, Christmas plays, babies, woo. So I performed Two Believers 3 times, which is a play about Mary telling Joseph that she's pregnant. I performed that, I think, 3 or 4 times that tour right after we lost. Like, so September, October, November, 3 months after losing my pregnancy, I was doing these plays talking about, I'm pregnant. God made me pregnant. Yay. And that was my choice. Nobody made me do that. That was my choice. But again, they were the right plays for the themes we were given. And, you know, well, and I didn't want, there was another woman on our team, but I felt it would be more painful having her do that play with my husband than me doing that play with my husband. So, you know, nobody made me do that. It was my choice, but I still was also playing by the rules, doing what was best for the ministry before what was best for me.
So you're in therapy, and how has that shifted some of your perspective about experiences or opened your perspective?
No, it's been really, really good. It's been good hearing somebody else. I mean, Emma, my therapist, she's amazing. And sometimes just hearing another person say, no, that was wrong. Or that shouldn't have happened, or that must have been really hard. Sometimes that's all that is needed to sort of unlock those chains of feeling guilt or shame or whatever. You know, I find most of my sessions, things come up and, you know, I'm just talking like I am now. And then she'll say, well, that's sort of interesting. And I go, you know, and it, oh, yeah, I guess it is. And yeah, just having another person validate your experience. Because again, I feel like within Covenant players, I have friendships and relationships with people that are very real and very raw and very deep. And it's not that people never validated those things, but as the overall experience of, well, just work harder. If you worked harder, the people who are sort of lifted up as examples were people who would never take a day off, who would miss family events for the ministry. And so you sort of felt like you were the weak one or you weren't right. But yeah, going through therapy, getting that validation that that's hard, that was wrong, that those things are okay to feel sad about. That's been really freeing for me to be able to work through them. Yeah, and I feel a lot of that shame and a lot of that guilt. Some of it's still there, and I don't think it will ever all go away. But it's a lot lighter. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, I got a unit citation one time, and I just think, wow, this is a little tiny blue ribbon with a dove pin. That thing, the cost of that little pin, that little recognition was just being worked to an extreme amount. Like, ah!
And I never got, I never, ever in 21 years got a unit citation, ever. None of my units were ever recognized. And, again, it's so interesting because, these are awards, not rewards. We were always told, everybody's done, but the amount of value that we would place on these little trinkets were huge. I remember there was a dance play, and I had spent hours doing the mix on the dance play music for the play. And I wanted that sound award because it was something I had gotten awards for set deck, I had gotten awards for performing, but sound was something I was sort of playing with and I was exploring, and I was really, really proud of the work that I'd done in the mix for this dance play. And the award went to the person who pushed play the night of, not me, who spent the hours doing it. And I mean, it was Shane who got the award. And Shane even said when he got it, actually, this really should go to Naomi, all of this. But it bothered me for years that I didn't get a piece of paper. Do you know? And it's like, that's weird. Do you know?
Oh, man. Do you still have your sash?
Somewhere, I think it's at my mom's. Things got shifted between Australia and Europe, and I I sort of stopped caring so much around Australia. A lot of those things sort of started meaning less to me. I got Grand Best, which was the highest acting award in Australia, but it was between me and one other person. So, I was sort of like, yeah, I got this thing, but there were only two people to give it to. So, oh well, and it was around then that it was when I was in Australia that after the experience with losing the babies and then a lot of other things, that's when my journey to leaving Covenant Players really started. And I got a bit jaded and I got a bit cynical about Covenant Players, about all of the things. But it still took me another 5 years to actually leave. Yeah.
It must be so hard. I can't even imagine like if I had been going through deconstruction while I was in, because while I was in, I was such an evangelical, man. It was a sin to be gay and blah 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 and all this stuff. And now I can't even imagine having like the Bible is perfect. There's no flaws within it. I was so black and white. I can't imagine carrying around jadedness and a lack of black and whiteness while traveling around.
Well, I mean, I had the advantage that a lot of that. So after we left Australia, we were not really ever on the road full time ever again, because we were in Germany waiting for a visa to come here to the UK and working at the office there, and that was a whole hullabaloo because we were dealing with all sorts of deconstructing people, and then I got pregnant with now my awesome fairy child, so then we immediately came into a home unit here in Wales, so we were never really on the road again, and that was helpful. My bubble started expanding just by nature of not always being in host homes and suddenly trying to figure out how to, at 40 something years old, trying to figure out how to, have a house and run a house, and oh my gosh, you got to buy toilet paper. And, I mean, I wasn't that dumb, but it's seriously, it was like, oh my gosh.
The transition to the real world that I was so sure was going to be boring. That's like a whole other episode.
Yeah, I mean, we moved into our flat on the 1st of June. We had Felicity on the 20th of July. And so that was just like, yeah.
I want to kind of spend the last, I don't know, few minutes of this. There's probably people watching this that have toured with you, that are listening, that know you of the ministry, or even if they're completely removed from the whole world that is Covenant Players, or world that was. What would you want to say to them, to people who are struggling to find themselves outside of this full-time ministry mentality, or people that have known you personally?
Yeah, I mean, I think people who've known me personally, I say, get to know me again. I mean, there is still very much, I am not, the foundation of who I am is still very much there. But like I said earlier, I'm still trying to figure out who I am. And I say take the time to do that, and that there's no rush in it. I think I've watched some other people leave Covenant Players and they've jumped from one frying pan into another, or they haven't given them, I think, having that time to breathe. I mean, I know life doesn't stop and there's always things, but when I left Covenant Players, I determined, it was in April last year, and I said, I'm going to give myself 6 months where I feel like I don't have to figure out anything, just to find my feet, to be used to, even though things had drastically changed, all of a sudden there was not this community right there. And giving myself that time to breathe, to grieve, to reconstruct, taking the time and allowing myself to go through that process and being really gentle with myself has been really good. And in that, I've been able to, I'm finding more of who I am and finding the real me that I was burying under masks and makeup and high heels. And, I can't wear high heels anymore, so that's not even an issue. I'm too old, it hurts. But, taking the time to undo all those layers and find out what's underneath. And I'm still not there, and I'm still working it out. I don't think I ever will fully be there. I think that's part of life, is that process of unfolding. And just taking time though to breathe and be kind to yourself.
I really love that. That really resonates. Get to know me again, and also like get to know me again. Like we're our journey of inner archaeology.
Well, it's always going to change, isn't it? Because not just leaving a ministry, but then like when you become a mom, that's a whole shift in who you are. And then as your kids get older, that's a whole shift. And then as you discover different how your brain works differently, or, all sorts of things. And as your relationships shift and change, constantly getting to know yourself and giving yourself that time to say, I'm shifting and changing, and then giving other people the time to shift and change as well, and giving them grace and saying, actually, I lived life with you for a really long time, but I don't know who you are anymore. So let's figure it out. I think there are certain people I know, if I saw them again, it would be amazing to sit down with some of these people, but I think we would all need time to find out who we were now. If I were to sit down with you and Penny, we, all three of us, have gone through such massive changes. It would be an adjustment period, but also not at the same time. I don't know.
I love that, like, we hadn't talked in like 5 years or something. And then it was like no time has passed whatsoever. We could talk for 19 hours straight. Like, our voices were hoarse and we're hungry.
Yeah.
And it's so awesome to talk to you about this. And I know we barely scratched the surface of any of it, but it's like, no, the point of these covenant player conversations is not about bashing anyone. It's about, like, I want to give people the chance to say, this happened to me. This is how it felt. This is how I'm doing now. Like,
and I think this is what I remember. There was something else I was going to say, and that just came to me. The process of going through everything and unpacking it have allowed me to hold the glimmer moments in covenant players with a lot more tenderness and care. That that's something that I've been very careful about. I don't want to become this bitter, angry person, because there's so much of my experience in covenant players that were it was true magic and love and so many things I wouldn't touch at all. My therapist asked me, she goes, if you could go back, would you not join covenant players? And I said, no, not at all. Because one, I wouldn't have this amazing kid that I've got and this husband in this home where I am. But beyond all of that, there were some amazing, amazing, amazing things, people, experiences, friendships that are beautiful. And I don't want to lose the fact that I had this beautiful, beautiful life that also had some thorns and darkness around it. And I'm working up not getting rid of it in the sense of forgetting it, but letting go of holding on to those dark things. I want to let those things go and say they happened. They were horrible. I will work through what I will need to work through with those, but I'm going to hang on to these beautiful, sparkly, magical moments that we had. because I think that's important, because there was a lot of color and a lot of life. And I got a tattoo recently. It's still healing, but it's all the glimmers of my journey in Covenant Players. That's what it is. It's all of the things that I loved about my time there. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's such a pleasure to talk to you, and I hold so much love for you, for those you fellow former Covenant players out there listening, watching to this. I hope that you can find some healing of places that might need healing, that probably do need healing. We all need some healing. I hope you feel seen and understood. It's like there is a part of us that we're only ever going to understand each other.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we can talk for 19 hours straight. Nobody else gets
people who've lived this insane life. I don't know. I want to leave you with that. I just hold so much love in my heart for you out there hearing this, and maybe feeling like a whole lot of feelings, maybe feeling a bit raw from your own memories, kind of opening up things that made you think of things. Like, you're not alone. And I hope that you have a therapist. I know I need one. I hope that you have friends with listening ears, and that you can feel the love that is there for you. So the way that I end my conversations is I give hugs. Hugs. Thank you. You're awesome.
Thank you, Katie. This was amazing.
I'm sure we'll have more to talk about some other time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big thanks to Naomi for being willing to share from her heart and from her experiences. I love that lady. I'm so thankful for her and for the wonderful friendships that I've had because of Covenant Players, and the fact that with so many of us, we can go years without talking, and then when we do, no time has passed. And it's just like that with family. If any of this really touched a nerve in you and you're feeling some feelings, I really want to encourage you to take the time that you need to take with that. And I hope that you have someone that you can share your experiences with, that won't judge about them, that will just show love to them. Thank you for sticking around, listening to this whole conversation with us. If you are a person who was in Covenant Players, whether we know each other personally or not, and you really feel like it would mean a lot to you to share your experience, to share your struggle and your journey of healing and freedom beyond your struggle, I would love to connect with you and have you as a guest. There's something that we share in common in this crazy life that no one else would really know. And it's wonderful to make those connections. I'm becoming more bold about saying this and putting this out there, but I would love to make this more of a full-time work. I'm not getting any money for it. I have no sponsors or anything like that. So if you would like to give a donation to support this work and the effort that I put into this YouTube channel, this Spotify, to support the expenses of the channel as well as the expensive work of having 3 children, it would be wonderful. I will include those details, my Spotify. I will include the PayPal details down below if you would love to do that. That would be really cool. Thank you again for being here, for watching, for supporting. Please share this with someone that you think would appreciate it, would resonate with it. Please help this channel to grow so that we can reach the people that it's meant to reach and just build community. Hugs! I'm so glad you're still here. Please like this video, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe. Bye!